I don't do these very often. Anybody who's listened to me for a long time, you guys know I have my full podcast. They go up every Sunday. I talk about Raw. I talk about SmackDown. And yeah, sometimes, you're talking about a Raw episode that's almost a week old. That's my schedule. That's the schedule that works for me. I'm fortunate enough to have an audience that, for whatever reason, likes to hear me talk about wrestling, so they wait until the end of the week. And I talk about all the different shows. The good, the bad, everything in between. So when I do one of these, the show must have been bad. This was, tonight, no exaggeration, the worst episode of Monday Night Raw that I have ever seen. Now, there have been plenty of bad Raws going all the way back to the early 90s. I don't want to pretend that this is a first-time occurrence here, that there's never been a bad Raw before. There's been plenty of bad Raws. You're going to get plenty of bad Raws. You have 1,300 episodes. There's bound to be a few bad apples in there. But they weren't 3 hours long. That's the big difference between then and now. It's very difficult when you have a bad week or a bad show. But literally, the entire 3 hours is absolute garbage. And yes, I know, we got a Dolph Ziggler-Seth Rollins match. The only reason that match was there was to mask the stench of the rest of the show. Hey, let's throw a little bit of red meat to these guys. We know we can send Rollins and Ziggler out there for 20 minutes. It's impossible for those two to have a bad match. So we'll throw a little bit of red meat out there for you. Yeah, I'm not interested. The 5,000th match between Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler. And I kind of feel foolish because earlier today, when Rollins announced on Twitter that he was going to be reinstating this open challenge for the Intercontinental Championship, he got people very excited. You had other members of the roster who tweeted him, raising their hand. You had Ricochet and NXT, hey, let's do a champion versus champion match. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. But all of a sudden, you start to get excited about the possibilities. Hey, this could be a lot of fun. Remember that one really fun match on Raw a few years ago that Rollins had with Neville? I don't remember if that was an open challenge situation back when Seth was champion. But I thought of that because, first of all, that was a friggin' awesome match, number one, and I miss Neville. And number two, it reminded me that when you get those kind of matchups that you don't ordinarily get to see, sometimes magic happens. Mustafa Ali from 205 Live, he chimed in, he raised his hand, and I thought to myself, there really is no reason why we can't get a match tonight between Seth Rollins and Mustafa Ali. Unless they have some big angle planned, and they have to go with a certain someone, because it ties into a storyline. Why not have a competitive match between Rollins and Mustafa Ali? Give them 15 minutes. Give them 20 minutes. Rollins goes over. They shake hands at the end. It's a great showing for Mustafa Ali. He shows he can hang with people outside the 205 Live bubble. And it's a big win for Rollins going into TLC in the match with Dean Ambrose. It's a win-win situation for everybody. But that's, of course, a little too creative. We can't have that. No. We can't have the 205 Live guy beat up our Intercontinental Champion because he may turn to dust or a pillar of salt. We may have locusts may fall from the sky and the world might end if that happens. So instead of going with somebody new, I don't give a shit if it was Mustafa Ali or whoever, instead of trying something new for a change, they gave us Dolph Ziggler. Thank you, no. Been there, done that. That is not enough to save this show. I'm sorry. So don't throw that in my face. Now, the first time I ever recorded an emergency sound off, whatever, when Raw went off the air, I was so pissed off, was back in 2011. That was the first time I ever did that. It was episode 184 of my show. And that was the night that the talent staged a walkout on Triple H, when Triple H was the COO, and everybody walked out, and John Cena said, I'm going to stay, and CM Punk said, I'm going to stay. Remember that? They didn't even have a referee. They didn't have a ring announcer. Punk put on Triple H's blazer, and he sat ringside and did commentary. That was the last time, or the first time anyway, that I felt so angered by a television show that I just had to record a quick show that night and talk about it. This so-called creative team staged a walkout on all of us a long time ago. Why do they even call it a creative team? They don't have a creative bone in their bodies. Dolph Ziggler answers the open challenge. Another week of Renee Young having to pretend that she has no idea what her husband is doing. Well, I only live with the guy. I don't know what he does all the time. Not exactly a marriage that's built to last, huh? We have another Lucha House Party win over the Revival. Another week with pee-pee jokes. My cat could book a more entertaining show than this. And all she does is lick herself and puke up hairballs. Licking myself and puking up hairballs would have been a far more pleasurable experience than watching this show tonight. And to the people who, and invariably, you will have people, well, Solomonster, if the show is so bad, why do you keep watching? Why don't you just stop? First of all, I do a show every week. And part of the show is talking about what happened on Monday Night Raw. Talking about what happened on SmackDown Live. Talking about what happened on NXT. You must be new here if you don't realize that. So that's the most logical answer, first of all. I do a show. You can do a show too. No one's stopping you from doing a show. I'm not saying I'm any more or less special than you. You want to do a show? Go do a fucking show. Don't tell me how to do mine. So, of course, I'm going to watch Monday Night Raw. But you know what? For all the times that people have said that and thrown that in my face, this might be the first time, when they say, why don't you just stop watching? You know what? I might. I have never been closer to throwing in the towel on this show than I am right now. February of 1995, that was the closest before this I ever came to giving up on, not just, Raw wasn't even really on my radar back then. I didn't have cable yet. I was Superstars and Challenge. But in February of 95, I remember it like it was yesterday. The product was so bad. It was so boring. The Blue Brothers and the Allied Powers. Pfft, gives a shit. That's what I thought. And I thought to myself, this is so boring, I might just give up. All my other friends, they grew out of wrestling. Maybe I need to grow out of wrestling too. But I stuck with it. And you know what? I'm glad I did. Because the year after that, the NWO invaded on Nitro. Nitro got hot. Vince McMahon got smacked around a little bit. And Raw turned into one hell of a fun show. On most weeks. Most weeks. There were still some weeks, even in the Attitude Era, and everybody loves to romanticize about that time period. Believe me, there were plenty of weeks that weren't so fun even back then. But I never felt like my intelligence was being insulted the way that it is today. I mean, it's as though they go out of their way every single week to try to outsuck themselves from the week before. How can we top ourselves this week and make this show somehow even more insufferable? They have their base. They know they're not going to dip below 2 million viewers. Had a few people tweet me tonight, is this going to be the week that Raw comes in under 2 million? The answer is no. No. They have their baseline. They have their core base that will stick with them through thick and thin, no matter what. And they know that. And they take advantage of that. They know they can get away with that. No matter how bad things get, they know that there is a certain baseline they will not fall below. And as far as why do I watch Raw, why not just focus on SmackDown? Or maybe not even focus on the key shows. Focus on other stuff. Man, there's so much great wrestling right now. Even NXT. Part of the same company. Somehow, part of the same company. Great show. I do watch NXT every week. That, for me, is appointment television. A lot easier to digest, too. It's less than 60 minutes. But there's a lot of great wrestling now. Even Impact, for all of its faults, I hear from people all the time, oh man, I wish Impact could do better. They just can't seem to gain traction. The product is so much better than it was a year ago. If people would only give it a chance. Ring of Honor is doing their thing. MLW, they put out a quality product, production-wise and talent-wise. I'm hearing more and more about them. Lucha Underground, who knows if that'll be back. I've stuck with it for the first 4 seasons. I love Lucha Underground. But, you know, when it comes to the clips here on this channel that I pluck from the main show, because I cut the main show up into certain segments, and some segments end up on the YouTube channel. And then I do the monthly pay-per-view videos and all that. But I track my views on this channel very meticulously. I track all my analytics. Because if you have a YouTube channel and you're a content provider and you're not tracking your analytics, then I don't know what you're doing. I track that stuff very closely, and I can see what performs well and what doesn't. And the reality is, like it or not, it's the WWE content, it's the Raw content that people want to see and people want to hear about. Impact Video goes up from time to time, barely a blip. Lucha Underground, it does maybe half the traffic that the WWE stuff does. Maybe. For all this talk about how fed up people are, and I know there's a lot of very fed up people, I'm one of them. But for all this talk about how fed up people are, we want alternatives. You know what? The support, it just isn't there for that stuff at the level that it is for bathroom humor and for the same matches and segments over and over and over and over and over again. So I continue, in part because I know people want to hear about it, I continue to give Raw a chance, hoping and waiting for something to change. You know that you're doing something wrong when you feel the need to send out a fan council survey to your audience, asking them about all the different things that you think you're doing wrong. Are we too focused on our corporate interests on TV? Yes. Are the shows too long? Yes. Are the promos too scripted? Yes. Yes, 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 yes. That was a real survey, by the way, that WWE sent out last week. I'm not just naming things that are wrong with the show. They put that in their survey. Because they recognize, hey, we may have a problem here. Now, is anything actually going to change? Of course not. But it's to give false hope and pretend that you're actually doing something to address these problems. And a big part of that are the fans. These are, in many cases, people who have long since given up on this shit show. And they rely on podcasts, they rely on YouTube shows. It's the first thing they do when the show goes off the air. They'll go and search around. They want to hear what happened on the show tonight. They don't want to sit through it themselves. Because they'll find the reviews that people do more entertaining than the actual television shows. They want to stay in the loop on what's going on. They're not ready to completely give up and cut the cord on wrestling or on WWE. They're not ready to do that yet, but they cannot stomach these shows anymore, so they let other people watch for them. And I get it. I get it. I understand that. But my God, is it like pulling fucking teeth to sit through this show week after week. You had Corbin, Lashley, Drew McIntyre, the almighty Bobby Lashley. I don't think they said the word almighty enough times tonight. They should have said it another 500 times. This is the first time they're really pushing that, and I'm already sick to death of hearing it. So you had Corbin and Lashley and McIntyre. They took out Braun Strowman last week. He had to have elbow surgery. He had to wait an extra day so the fools who write this shit could have their lobotomies done. They got that taken care of first. Then he got his elbow surgery. So they took him out of the picture last week, although according to Michael Cole, the match at TLC is still on between Strowman and Corbin. This week, it was Elias's turn. And Finn Balor. More heel authority nonsense up and down the show. And I get that it's part of the storyline that they're telling right now. The heels are dominating. The hope is that in the end, the heels will get their comeuppance from who, I don't know. Especially if Strowman really is hurt and can't do much. I guess in the end it'll be Strowman and Balor and Elias fighting back, whoop-de-doo. But that's the storyline that they're telling right now. I get that. But up and down this show tonight, heel shenanigans and more heel shenanigans. They don't even try to mix it up. This is on top of all the other horrible television that they gave us. This was not the night to do this. You would think on a 3-hour show, it's like their variety show. Keyword there being variety. There's no variety on this show. But here you had Corbin yet again changing the rules of the match on the fly. Now it's no DQ with Elias, and then later on with Balor. Oh, wait, I forgot to mention, now it's a handicap match, and here comes my partner, Drew McIntyre. How many times have we seen this? Kurt Angle may have stumbled and mumbled over his own words. He wasn't the best general manager of all time. But I appreciated having a babyface general manager, a more neutral authority figure, if we need one on this show. We've all been conditioned to, we need authority figures on these shows. No, we don't. Believe it or not, there was a period of time in wrestling where we either didn't have an authority figure or they were in the shadows. They weren't even on the show every week. We heard about things when they had an announcement to make, or when they did show up. Woo, it's a big deal. They're actually showing up tonight. Jack Tunney is showing up tonight. Commissioner Shawn Michaels is actually showing up tonight. Somehow, these shows went along just fine without having to have 6, 7, 8 different segments backstage or in the ring dedicated to the fucking GM. It's one of those plot devices that they have come to rely on far too much, and it just ends up dominating the show. What's so exciting about that? That would be like watching a fucking NBA game and half the game is segments with Adam Silver. Or before him, I got David Stern. Or Gary Bettman in the NHL, or Paul Tagliabue, right? He used to be the guy in the NFL. MLB used to be Budweiser, Bud Selig, whatever the fuck his name was. Imagine sitting there watching a Yankee game, and half the game is segments with Bud Selig. Oh, how exciting. What riveting television. And a big part of the problem with this is that, look, if you're going to do this sort of thing, at least have compelling characters to plug into the role. Mr. McMahon was a compelling character on television back in the day. In fact, he was the best heel this company ever saw. Best wrestling heel, at least in this company, of all time, was that Mr. McMahon character. But if you have compelling characters, that's one thing. There is nothing compelling about Baron Corbin. Acid reflux is more enjoyable than watching Baron Corbin. But this is how they started and ended the show. They started with the Elias stuff. They spent 3 hours building to the Balor match. Building as though, well, they must have something planned here for the end of the show. But, boy, they must have something up their sleeve. I'm not saying that this would have saved the show, because it wouldn't have, but there were rumors all day that Bray Wyatt was there. They're going to do something. They're going to try to relaunch Bray Wyatt. Again, that would not have saved anything, but at least it would have been something. Nope. More of the same. That's how they started the show. That's how they ended the show. A good old shit sandwich they served us up tonight. What was in the middle, unfortunately, wasn't much better. They had the Lucha House Party again, a quick match, big win over the Revival. Okay. I mean, the Revivals, I mean, they're dead ducks. I mean, they're done. There was something there. Yeah, they weren't the flashiest team in the world. Even in NXT. When I first laid my eyes on the Revival, I thought to myself, It's like when I first saw Andrade Cien Almas for the first time, and he was out there wearing a top hat and suspenders like he was at a Chippendales. Thankfully, they were able to, reinvent him and put him with Zelina Vega. He became a hot act. Not so much these days on SmackDown. Although I'd much rather he be on SmackDown than on this show. But the Revival also, I looked at them, I'm like, okay, they look like a jobber tag team you would see back in the mid-90s. But then they went out there and they wrestled, and they had matches against, I'm pretty sure they had matches with Ciampa and Gargano. I know they had, matches with American Alpha, and they tore the house down. They got over because of their matches. So you think to yourself, all right, these guys aren't much to look at, really, and they're not the flashiest promo or anything like that. We'll call them up. What really got them over in NXT? Because maybe what got them over in NXT will not get you over on the main roster. It is two different audiences. What works in NXT may not work on the main roster. Case in point, Bayley. Although I put a lot of that blame on the booking of Bayley. That is not all. I'm not going to put all the blame on the character because I still think it could have worked. But it didn't. She never got over at the level on the main roster that she did in NXT. But you would look and say, how do we focus on the strengths and hide whatever weaknesses these people have? And instead they do the exact opposite. All this stuff with the Authors of Pain and AOPP and all that garbage. I said this on the show last week. Between that and the Revival, Vince McMahon is having a good belly laugh at the expense of NXT. Triple H, it's got to be eating him alive inside. He's sitting there with a headset on his head every week. He's sitting there next to the old man. He sees what's going on. You think he likes that? All the time and effort that he spends trying to get these guys over, help them find themselves in NXT, putting them over like there's some kind of big fucking deal on those takeover shows, only for them to get called up and treated like this? You think that makes him happy? Then we had Nia Jax. Don't even get me started on this. Nia Jax is out there with Tamina. She's cutting a promo on Ronda Rousey, and this is garbage. Ronda Rousey comes out there. She's got a smile on her face. I still don't get that. You know, Ronda Rousey, they keep mocking her mean face. Ooh, you got a mean face. You got a mean face. Really, she does? Because I haven't seen it lately. Every time I see her, she's coming out with a big fat smile on her face. She came out on the show last week. She was 24 hours removed from what I thought was a pretty brutal beatdown at the pay-per-view. I mean, that was a pretty stiff post-match beating that Charlotte laid down on Ronda Rousey. The welts all over her body, the chair around the neck, stomping it, bleeding from the mouth. Didn't even miss one show. And as if that wasn't bad enough, she comes out and she's all smiles. They're showing us replay footage tonight of what happened at Survivor Series like it's supposed to be a big deal. Who gives a shit? She had a chair wrapped around her head and she's bleeding from the mouth. Who cares? She came back on the show the next night like it didn't mean anything. All of a sudden, we're supposed to care like it's a big deal? These injury angles don't mean anything anymore because they completely killed them. It's like when Triple H got dropped. He was in a car. Stone Cold put him in a car, raised him 20 feet into the air, dropped the car, would kill any normal man. I think Triple H was back like a week later. Oh, he had contusions. Oh, well. So this is not something that's exclusive to just WWE in 2018. They have a history of doing things like this. But the Ronda thing, she comes out there smiling, just pissed me off. So, I don't, are we supposed to have sympathy for her? Are we supposed to look at her and bet, wow, what a valiant fighter to go through everything she went through and she fought her way back? She didn't fight her way back. It meant nothing. But the Nia Jax promo was absolute garbage. Nia Jax has no business even being on television. But she'll get a big push out of it now. Good for her. Tag team title match. We got a tag team championship match. AOPP. Defending the tag team titles against Bobby Roode and Chad Gable. What's the big storyline going into this match? Well, Drake Maverick, he was embarrassed because he peed himself at Survivor Series. And he was mocked last week by Roode and Gable in that backstage segment in catering. So what happens here? Big tag team championship match. They've been building Roode and Gable up for weeks and weeks and weeks. 17,000 matches against the Ascension has all led to this. Drake Maverick steals Bobby Roode's robe, puts it on, takes it backstage, goes to the bathroom, puts it over the toilet, stuffs it into the toilet, and pees on it. This, of course, distracts Bobby Roode, and he is promptly beaten down and pinned, and AOP retain their tag team titles. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the creative genius of WWE. Ember Moon. We were rocking and rolling at this point in the show, man. We were firing on all cylinders. So what do? Ember Moon against Alicia Fox. That goes about 2 minutes. That leads into Jinder Mahal against No Way Jose. You know how many fans probably said, "No way, Jose," when this show went on the air tonight? A lot of them. They were smarter than me. We had the open challenge for the Intercontinental Championship. Like I said, they had the chance here to think outside the box and go with a new opponent and let them go out there and just tear it up. Nope. Let's just go with our tried and true. We'll do another match between Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler. And Seth Rollins beat him. The one thing I will say about this, he actually won with the superplex into the Falcon Arrow for a change. That was different. That's about the only good thing I could say about this. There was no attack. Dean Ambrose wasn't there. He had a promo earlier in the show. Oh, I forgot to mention him. He didn't show up on Raw tonight. No. He was at his doctor. He was getting shots. I wish somebody would have given me a shot. Pulls his pants down. Doctor gives him a shot in his ass. He's healing on the fans. Typical WWE heel bullshit. I was hopeful when they turned Ambrose that this would be a really sinister heel version of Dean Ambrose. And it's the same old, same old. It talks about the fans. You fans smell. I don't want to be around you. I might get rabies. I might get, gonorrhea. I don't know. But he wasn't on the show other than that tonight. So he just beat Dolph, and I thought to myself, did they really have to go with Ziggler? They couldn't put anybody else in that spot? I guess not. Maybe next time. Then we had an open forum. Alexa Bliss, there's been rumors that she would be appointed as the Raw GM if Corbin was fired from the spot because she's not ready to come back yet. And that's kind of what happened tonight. Corbin basically put her in charge of the entire women's division on Monday Night Raw. She became the women's GM here tonight on this show. And so she said, tonight we're going to have a segment where Sasha Banks and Bayley go to the ring, and we're going to have an open forum where we're going to throw it to questions from the fans, questions from the WWE Universe. And again, this lasted all of 2 or 3 minutes. It was lame comedy, and it ended with Mickie James and Dana Brooke, who Dana Brooke was teaming with the babyfaces at Starrcade last night, so I don't quite understand that. But they come out, Alicia Fox, they come out and they beat down Sasha and Bayley. That was it. And then, of course, we had the big main event between Finn Balor and Baron Corbin. The less said about that, the better. Tomorrow night on SmackDown, they're promoting the return of Becky Lynch and an AJ Styles promo talking about Daniel Bryan. I already know it's going to be a much better show than this was. It would take a hell of a lot for it to be worse. So my hope is that SmackDown tomorrow will wash away the taste, the horrible taste I have in my mouth after this abomination. Because Monday Night Raw right now is as bad as it has ever been. For all the talk about how this show, 25 years, they just celebrated 25 years at the beginning of the year, over 1,300 episodes, longest running episodic television show anywhere. Like, they're so proud. They're so proud of this show. There is nothing to be proud of right now with this show. This show is as bad as ever. And they may have their big fat new TV contract signed and sealed. But they owe it to their audience to at least pretend like they're trying. Tonight was an insult. They should be embarrassed that they even let this make the air tonight. You have the biggest roster of any promotion ever. More talent than they know what to do with, clearly. Fucking act like it. I'm done here. I'll see you next week.